All right, everybody, welcome back. Sam's Army, episode 2.247. We got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to start out with headlines where if you can't beat them, buy them in Manchester. Saudi exits, Italian racisms, and more bad news for Everton, unfortunately. Weekly What If. In lieu of our normal hypothetical, we're going to do a little housekeeping work here. Premier League, we will talk Arsenal or Liverpool, plus a look at this weekend's FA Cup matchups. Around the world, USMNT, the January camp, it has come and gone. The Slovenia game is mercifully behind us. We'll do a real quick sort of winners and losers, stock up and down type of thing. And then we'll move on to stoppage time with Ivan Toney's best bets and everyone's favorite segment, GOAWs. Now, time to welcome in this week's beauty, who everybody knows quite well at this point, Mr. Mitchell Goulet, aka Overtime Mitch, coming to us from, I think you're in balmy New York City at this point.
I am. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I was just thinking about this when I was reading or writing the little intro here. I was like, you have been all over the world, including New Zealand and Australia over the course of while we've been taping this, but you've lived in New York, you lived in Boston, you lived in Maine, you lived in California. And I think this is your second stint maybe in New York. Is that about, if I missed any cities?
Oh yeah, you're spot on. It was New York, then LA, then Boston, then Maine, then New York again.
You are all over. Do you feel like an East Coaster at this point?
Personality wise, yes. I liked LA because of the weather out there, but I didn't like a lot of other things about it. It's a lot of the intangibles. The weather's fucking nice out there, let me tell you. I'm strongly considering moving back just currently because it's negative 20 degrees here in New York.
Yeah. I mean, it's January, so those intrusive thoughts come around every 12 months. As somebody lives in Chicago and is looking out onto the third floor, fourth floor roof deck of 3 inches of snow and nothing but grayness. Not a happy, or not a bird, not a nothing, not a green shoot anywhere in sight. But you know what?
Makes you yearn for warmer places.
That's right. In fact, I mean, I've been in warmer places recently. I was out in San Francisco. I was out in Miami. I'm actually happy. Right. I'm actually happy to be back in Chicago. It's such a homebody that this is I just feel more at home. That's a very cliche thing to say when you're at home. But anyway, now I said we're going to do the housekeeping after headlines as a weekly what if. And in fact, you know what? Let's do that. So we'll jump right into the headlines for this week, and we'll start out in Manchester, as I mentioned. So the first move of the Jim Radcliffe era / Ineos is upon us here. It sounds like they made their first big splash. They hired Omar Barada as CEO of Manchester United. So Barada, and I'm definitely butchering his name, so sorry to Omar. He's a former Manchester City executive. He was COO over there until 2020 when he moved upstairs, metaphorically anyway, to a senior executive position within City Football Group. And now he's coming over to Manchester United. So, Mitch, just sort of first knee-jerk reaction to the news here.
Just straight comedy from the Red Club in Manchester to go over and hire your neighbor's former COO and CFG, I guess. It's a weird hire. I don't know if part of the mindset was he grew City to what they are now during their prime years, so maybe he could do the same thing with us. Being COO over there, I don't know if he had any hand in the FFP, the 100+ FFP violations that are still yet to be decided on. But maybe United are fuck it. If he can get them to that level with a couple rule breakings, why can't he do that same thing for us?
Yeah, it would be
feels like just a strange hire.
It would be the ultimate Manchester City or Manchester United move to bring him over, and then he gets found out as sort of like,
Yeah, he's just a fraud.
just a total fraud or a bad person. And now, of course, we're not saying that. And in fact, I would have hoped that, Manchester United will have done their homework and done their due diligence and know that, he just is a competent and shrewd, football, soccer executive. And that's probably what he is at the end of the day. Like I'm going to give Radcliffe and Ineos like the credit, some benefit of the doubt here and say,
yeah, you don't get that job unless you know your way around a boardroom or two. I say it's a weird hire. Not like I'm more qualified or even have a list of candidates that are more qualified. Like it makes sense, but it just moving Manchester to Manchester is a strange move to me.
Smart move by him. It feels like an uncharacteristically shrewd move by Manchester United, because if this guy was at City doing, if he had a hand in making City what they are right now, I mean, that's not a bad move. And maybe he being Omar Barada, maybe he sort of, he knows what's going on, and it's maybe good time to get off the ship that is Manchester City. We shall see about that. We talked about the 115 violations, ad nauseum at this point, so we won't go back into that at this point. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes on. Number 2, players seem to be fleeing Saudi Arabia, which I think will come as a shock to, well, everybody and nobody at the same time. So we got this Jordan Henderson news, which has become kind of farcical at this point. Sounds like he's, he got over there. He got absolutely lampooned by, Liverpool fans who felt as though he was sort of backtracking on, his sort of outspoken commitments to, LGBTQ, that sort of stuff. They felt like he was kind of, what should we say, being hypocritical or something. And you know what? All he had to do was be like, yeah, man, they're just paying me a shitload of money. Just admit it.
Why is that so hard to say for
Why is
some
it so
people?
hard to
Who
say?
was it? Was it Zaha that was like, yeah, oh no, Zaha plays in
Somebody
who
just said it.
yeah, he was sitting on a private plane while he did it, and he's like, yeah, you guys know why I came over here? The buttloads of money they're paying me. Because I get to kick a ball around for a living and they're paying me gajillions of dollars to live my life here. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to go win trophies and etch my name in history books. Like I'm making money and I'm making a living for my family. Why is that so hard and frowned upon socially for people to say?
Crazy. I know exactly who you're, the situation you're talking about, because it was somebody that went over to China, I believe. And he basically was like, yeah, we went over there for a shit ton of money, just like the guys that are going to Saudi, for all this money. But yet nobody is willing to just be like, yeah, this is life-changing money. Like, get off my ass. Like my family, doesn't have to, go paycheck to paycheck for years, maybe generations, who knows. So that's the first one. Jordan Henderson has moved from El Etifak, I believe is what it was, with Steven Gerrard. He went to Ajax, which is an interesting move. Sounds like Ajax fans are pretty excited about it, by the way. He was,
Sure, why wouldn't you be?
They broke some sort of record in terms of jersey sales on the first day. So but it became farcical in the sense that he's not, I don't know if he's taking any money from his 6 months in Saudi, because if he does, then it screws up some sort of tax situation, and then he would not be eligible to play for the English national team in the Euros. I believe I got that more or less right, but it's just a complete farcical situation. And then not quite as farcical, but also kind of, is this a canary in the coal mine type situation? Karim Benzema sounds like he wants out of Saudi Arabia as well. So I've just, those two together in 1 week, I figured it was worth bringing up. We'll see how things go from here. I don't know, anything to add on from your side there?
I have not watched a single minute of Benzema play football since he moved to Saudi, so I can't really speak on his current standard, but I find it hard to believe that he would be able to play there rather inconsistently and then move to like a top 5 league. I've heard Arsenal links, which I don't think I'd be too upset at, but I wouldn't be thrilled with it either. I just find it really difficult to believe that he could get up to like a Premier League or a La Liga standard again at his age. Then again, this is one of the best strikers of all time. I don't want to undersell him or what he's done. But form is really important, and especially if you're to transfer in a January transfer window, you're coming into the middle of a season. It's difficult to get up to speed to a new team, especially one that you're jumping a level of play. So
several levels.
Yeah, several.
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know. Cristiano said that the Saudi league is on par with or better than Ligue 1 right now. I'd say some Saudi teams may be able to beat some lower in the table Ligue 1 teams, but like as a whole, the standard of the French league is better. Please don't get it twisted. Cristiano Ronaldo is paid millions of dollars a year to endorse that league. He's going to say it's good.
Yeah,
pound for pound, though.
That was a bought and paid for.
Yeah,
promotional.
I don't think anybody actually. I think everybody took that with several grains of salt, but still.
It's always when he says stuff like that, and then he also talked about how Ballon d'Or and FIFA Player of the Year are kind of like losing some of their relevancy. Like he's probably right about part of that. Like the Ballon d'Or and stuff.
Yeah, sure. There's
There's
some truth to it. It's always been a bit of a popularity contest. No one's ever won the Ballon d'Or that wasn't also very well loved by the football world. But when all of those comments come back to back to back, it sounds a little defensive / complainy, and with it, which feeds into his whole criticism of kind of being whiny and being a prima donna or whatever. I think there's absolutely some validity to what he's saying. But
there is.
When they all
but he always says it 5 minutes after like Messi beat him out for an award or Erling Haaland won.
Yeah, his timing's not great, is it?
Right. It sort of makes you think, okay, well, I got to take everything you're saying kind of with a little bit of a grain of salt there, at least sort of.
When he's saying all of these things, he says them in English, right? Which is not his first language.
Yeah.
I think Messi is smart by not even trying to speak in English. And so he doesn't get English media twisting his words around. Not saying that's what's happening, but like when you speak in English media are going to pick up your stories. When you don't say anything, nobody can criticize you for it. So I think that's another point in the Messi GOAT column.
Very true. Very good point there. All right, we'll move on to Italy. Did another racism, not the first time. It won't be the last time, unfortunately. So it was Mike Magnan, who was was this AC Milan? Who's he playing?
Mm-hmm.
So basically there was chants, I assume just sort of monkey chants or something coming from the stands. This has been a problem many times, unfortunately, not just in Italy, to be fair, but he basically, I'm sure it wasn't just like a one-time thing. He probably was dealing with it for a while, and finally he's like, you know what, that's enough of this. Told his teammates, told the ref, and they all walked off the field, which is sad to say, but it seems like this is the kind of thing we're going to have to do if if we're going to move in the right direction. So Gianni Infantino, a person who I would say we haven't been exactly in love with, or said too many nice things about on this program.
He hasn't paid us to, so why would we be?
Right, exactly. We're taking sponsorship, and we might in the future. So just keep that in mind, Gianni. But he basically said, we're at the point where we need to start instituting, point deductions and forfeits and that sort of thing to try and get this out of the game. And for once, he may actually be right, because it seems like this is whatever we're doing right now, which always seems to be like paying lip service to a situation, being like, oh, that's terrible, I feel bad for that player, and then we move on. It feels like we got to do something, because we're just doing the same shit, in circular. And it's just happening again and again and again. And this type of collective punishment, like, I'm not really in favor of it in a general sense, but I mean, this is the kind of the only way, it seems like, to maybe have fellow fans, when you're hearing somebody be, racist or do whatever, if you have the other fans around them who then be like, shut the fuck up, like, you're going to cost you. Not only are
You're
you
gonna
just
get us
being
relegated.
right, not only are you a bad person, and you're
Yeah.
just sort of outing yourself and teaching kids or whoever the hell's around to be a bad person, but you're also going to fuck up the future of this club if you keep doing this and costing us points and stuff. I kind of instinctively cringe at the thought of collective punishment. It's just not a good thing, but I'm just not even sure what the alternative is, and it's worth maybe giving a shot too, because nothing else seems to be working at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark this down as one of the rare times that I'll agree with Gianni Infantino.
Right, we give Johnny 2 thumbs up on that one. 2 more news, because I actually have a late breaking one that I'm going to throw at you at the end here. But Isaac Hayden, who was a 28-year-old English defender, so he just up and left Standard Liège, the Belgian top flight club, and he's suing them because he says they either didn't pay him on time or at all, which is, number one, just kind of sad that you have an ownership group that clearly is I don't know, like you're either not on the ball or you're broke or maybe both, and obviously that's a problem. So that's sad, but then it gets scary because the ownership or the owners of this club, Standard Liège, is 777 Partners, which is probably a group that we've talked about. In fact, I know we've talked about on this program. They own a whole bunch of other clubs. They own Genoa, Red Star, Vasco da Gama, Hertha Berlin, and they're on the verge of buying Everton. So it just sort of seems like maybe the absolute last thing in the world that Everton fans should or would want to be dealing with right now is the prospect of yet another owner who is gonna just be problematic. Like I don't know. So I figured it's worth pointing out. I don't know. We don't know the situation behind what was going on with Isaac Hayden. I have heard some things about the Belgian league. And this is not, by the way, from Sammy Vines, even though he was on the program, and hopefully he's going to come on the program again. Congrats to him, by the way, on the move to Colorado. Colorado, by the way, kind of a wagon all of a sudden. But we can talk about that later at a different juncture. For right now, I've been hearing reading a lot of things about the Belgian league where, things, it just doesn't sound good. It sounds like, there's some money issues for multiple clubs, and I don't know. I hope they get it figured out. So we don't know exactly the situation with 777 Partners, but yeah, this can't be good. And especially, I don't know how they would pass the test. We have allegedly we still have that test that you got to pass, to become a Premier League partner. Maybe that's out the door. Maybe we've just sort of, said that's a thing, just like FFP is a thing, which basically it isn't at this point. It's sort of what we're assuming. I don't know, but after MBS and PIF and Saudis got past the test on Newcastle, everybody's like, yeah, no test anymore. everybody's past this one. It's judged on a curve.
I still have faith that FFP is a thing and that City will, have their day of reckoning. I honestly think that Everton had a handful of financial fair play violations. City have 100 plus. That takes a long time to go through. These are account books that they have to check. These are like email and text coordination that they have to check. Like it takes a long time to individually look at each one of those violations. I think it's just going to take like another 2 years for them to actually see consequences for that.
That's fair.
But still, it feels like a bit of a farce right now. I get what you're saying.
And I actually agree with you. I try not to always go for like the low hanging fruit and sort of, get my
but each week that
in.
passes and they, continue to sit comfortably in that top 4, it feels worse and worse. And it's like, well, come on, what about,
Everton's already lost 10 points and their situation was seemingly far less serious. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But point being, Everton, like, talk about out of the fire out of the frying pan into the fire or whatever.
Yep.
Finally getting a sale of the ownership group, and it sounds like this new one might have some question marks. Okay, sorry about that, Everton fans. We'll move on though. So as much as we all know that we can't live with referees, we may soon be reminded that we can't live without them as well. The labor union representing the North American professional referees authorized a strike that may mean,
Ah,
that may mean MLS could start the season with replacement referees. So if you thought, reffing was bad last season, which by the way, I would argue against, I think the reffing is as good as it ever has been. And our expectations has just gone through the roof, thanks in part to VAR. But if you thought it was bad last season, just wait until we see, a literal amateur hour referee, who's being asked to call a foul on Lionel Messi.
I might have to dust off the whistle then. Oh, this is
Yeah, that's
interesting.
right. That's right. They might, I don't know if they do tests for ownership in the Premier League or financial fair play, but they would definitely do some sort of test, even on the replacement ref. So you might have to do, some reading, do some homework, get
I'll
your
brush up a
mind
little.
right. So there we go. There's our headlines. Last headline: Dallas just scored on Inter Miami, so the season is off and running. Tyler's actually calling that game, so that's why he's not with us this week. We will move on to weekly what if time, and in lieu of weekly what if, I'm going to give a quick little housekeeping, not announcement, just sort of give people an update. I do these every now and again. Usually it's something about, uh, something less sort of whatever, germane or less serious. And this isn't that serious. So don't get your, panties in a bunch here. But, anybody who's been listening to this podcast for, a while knows that we don't really talk about ourselves or our feelings or this sort of thing. But some things have been coming to a head lately. And, I do think it's a good time right now, to get some things off my chest, maybe give people a little window into the backroom workings of Sam's Army here. So, you know, let's see, in a couple months now, actually, I will have been doing this. And by this, I mean soccer contenting for 10 years. 10
Damn.
years as of like May or June. That's when Dan Big Cat asked me to do some blogs about the 2014 World Cup. That's the only reason I remember the date or the time of year. Anyway, so holy shit, 10 years, of blogging, tweeting, Instagramming, memeing, podcasting, and the like. It's been a hobby. It's been a passion project. It's been a creative outlet. And for me, it's just sort of been my way of staying connected with and sharing my love of soccer for the last 10 years. I've honestly enjoyed like almost every single minute of it when Tottenham and or the US men's national team isn't playing with my emotions. And I have so many people to thank. I have tried every now and again to remind myself to thank the people who have just sort of donated and literally donated their time, effort, and thoughts over the years. But a quick thank you to, honestly, Dan Big Cat, who got me started in this whole thing, and my wife, who has semi-quietly endured me spending countless hours writing, memeing, and podcasting over the years. And also, just a huge thanks to guys like Mitch and Mikey and Tommy and Tyler and Dalton and all these guys. Like there's been so many people that have come and gone through, the doors of Sam's Army, metaphorically speaking, over the years. And, I can't thank them enough. So I'm saying this not because, we're going anywhere. I hope we're not going anywhere for a long time. But I do think that, it's come time that we need to make some changes. I don't know exactly what those are going to be. But at the end of the day, part of it is that instead of me saying thanks over and over and over to guys like Mitch and Mikey, Tommy, Tyler, etc., like I really need to find a way to say thank you and also pay them a little bit. So we will see how that works. It's something that I've been struggling with for honestly years at this point. It's just not really in my nature to monetize something or turn it into business. I'm like always the dumbass who just wants to do things for free and, not have anybody sort of over my shoulder telling me what I can and can't say and all that stuff. Hopefully I can continue that, but with adding in a little bit of monetization. So we shall see. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how to work it, but we have a lot of people. We have a lot of smart people in and around the program. And so hopefully, the thing I've been struggling with is that it feels like I've been sort of treading water for the last, say, I don't know, not me. The whole program has been treading water for 6 months to a year. And I do feel like it's probably my fault. I need to be the one to maybe get out of the way in certain respects and push the program forward. And there's too many smart people, really good soccer people and everything and involved and connected with Sam's Army. And we need to make this bigger and bring people in. And hopefully this is sort of the first step towards making Sam's Army what it really should be, which is bigger and better. So thank you, everybody else. Last but definitely not least, thank you, everybody, for listening. I honestly, I can't thank you enough. I really do appreciate it. All the people who are commenting on Instagram and sending me messages and, interacting with Mitch and Mikey and Tommy and Tyler and everybody. Can't thank you guys enough. And hopefully here's to many more years to come. So that's the housekeeping note. Thing to, something to keep in mind in the future, whether it be sponsors, whether it be something else. There's going to be some sort of changes. I don't know what they are, but there we go. Get that off my chest. I feel so much better now. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me, and thank you, Mitch, for giving me the license to do so.
Always.
So we'll move on to what is next? Premier League. So kind of an abbreviated week yet again. There after the holiday fixture bonanza, we really sort of hit this lull. I don't know if it's always been like that with like EFL Cup and FA Cup and kind of an international break. It's been a weird sort of time, but this week we don't have a bunch of games. There were some FA Cup games or EFL Cup games. There are some FA Cup games that we're going to get to this weekend. We're going to get to those shortly, but quickly the games that were actually played over the last, say, week or so. Let's see. We had the two games that really stood out to me, which we'll get to, are Arsenal just beating the bejesus out of Crystal Palace 5-0 and Liverpool putting a hurting on Bournemouth 4-0. Those are the two games I want to talk about quickly with you. But first, before that, Sheffield United and West Ham. That game was absolutely bonkers. It's a game like Sheffield United is near the bottom of the table. West Ham is pushing for a European spot at this point. They're having a great season. And this game was just back and forth. Awesome game. It just reminded me of what the Premier League is all about and why we sort of love it so much. Like Sheffield United, they're near the bottom of the table. They still have so many good players and can on their day, play with anybody. There was red cards galore in this. There were VAR decisions, controversy, of course. Lots of good goals, 4 of them. 2-2 is how it ended. Just an incredible game. There was the call at the end. And so Sheffield United evened it up. What was it? 90 minutes and 13. So 103 minutes into the game. They got a penalty. They scored it to even it up 2-2. And you think that's kind of the end of the game. No, there was a lot more still to go here. There was a cross, and who was it? Was it Bowen, I believe, was kind of tackled in the box, and the referee didn't call it. The VAR looked at it, didn't give it. West Ham got absolutely screwed. And I that's just one of those VAR calls that 85% of the world says they got wrong. And for good reason, because it was just a ridiculous play, but it's just such a good game. And excuse me, I didn't have a sneeze button, so I had to hold that one in there. But it was just such an awesome game, and it just reminded me, wow, that is why, a West Ham Sheffield United game, and I was just completely captivated by it, and it was just so entertaining. And that's what the Premier League gives you, right? That's what keeps us coming back week after week. But my question,
I think it's one of the best.
Oh, go for it.
I just to expand upon that, I think it's one of the best and most entertaining leagues in the world because of just that. You can get a Sheffield West Ham game that is more entertaining than you could have even imagined. But that's why you watch it as a neutral fan. Like any average game on a Monday. So like I watched Brighton and Wolves today, and it was a huge waste of 2 hours of my day. But I
No, I was
watched
gonna
it.
say that as a counter
Yeah,
argument to
yeah, no,
this.
no, I'm not. That's in contrast, not comparison. But I watched it because on any given day, you can have a game that is just so enthralling for the neutral viewer that there's two red cards, that there's last minute penalty shouts, that there's last minute equalizers, and that's just a normal day for those two teams. Whereas I feel like in other leagues and other sports, maybe there just isn't that level of I don't know, erratic excitement that can be had on between two average teams. That's why we love this league. It's
Yeah,
well put.
not as often. Not it just doesn't. It just happen. It
Right.
can come out anywhere,
It's
and
always unexpected.
seems to come out relatively often in the EPL. Now, to be fair, League MX, if we're talking about crazy, erratic ridiculousness, League MX is way
Huh.
up there as well. Shout out to them. But we probably aren't even giving the game its full due. I mean, like there were two red cards after the 90th minute in this game, so it just a ridiculous game. And in the end, West Ham should feel screwed. Like they got absolutely hosed in that one. Okay, but the other the games that had Liverpool and Arsenal are hurting on their opponents in this week's fixtures. So Crystal Palace was the victim of Arsenal, and Bournemouth took the shellacking from Liverpool. It sort of got me thinking. I mean, like these are the two teams everybody thinks is going to give City, its run for the money this year. So I don't know if I can ask you, and you can give us an unbiased thought on this at this point. But what do you think? Arsenal or Liverpool are in a better position at this point?
You don't bring me on this podcast for unbiased thoughts.
That's true.
Um, I think given the current injury situation over at Liverpool with Salah's injury looking like it's going to be more serious than initially anticipated, I think Arsenal are in a better position. I think we really, really needed that this weekend. We had a training camp in Dubai that was well needed. Looked like everybody got to hit the reset button. We didn't have a game for 13 days. It was a needed respite. And we're not really, I mean, we're losing Tomiyasu to the Asian Games. We're losing El Neni, he doesn't get play. And then Partey, which is fine. I'm still convinced he's in prison. We're not really losing much with the international tournaments going on, whereas Liverpool we've seen have been crazy affected. That is a huge blow to hear Mohamed Salah is not going to be available for at least another month and a half. And that's on the low side of those predictions. So currently Arsenal.
So
But if you want my answer just based on play and based on like, okay, who looks like they can go take a title more, it's still Arsenal. Don't get it twisted.
well played, because that was going to be sort of my segue into the Liverpool,
Yeah.
like the results that they've been getting lately. Alone, if you just look at the results, it kind of looks like a team that is sort of rounding into form. They're coming, they're
Yeah.
top of the table. They're up 5 points. Yes, City has a game in hand, but I was actually, until the Mo Salah injury, which happened this week,
Mhm.
I was kind of thinking about whether I wanted to say I think Liverpool might actually win this thing. I don't know if I can do that anymore, because without him for this long, I mean, they're saying that Egypt thinks he might come back for like the semifinals, which yeah,
I,
we'll see about that.
Everything I've read has said to the contrary.
Yeah, we'll see about that, bros. First of all, I don't think Liverpool is letting him outside, the training complex.
No, God, no. You think they're letting him get out of bubble wrap?
No, absolutely not. But it's too bad about that injury, because I really was sort of on the cusp of thinking, you know what, this Liverpool team and the way they've been getting these results with their not B team, but like a lot of fill-ins. I kind of had the feeling this is a team that looks like they might go ahead and win the title. At least they have the opportunity to do so. But if they don't have Salah for a month and a half, oof,
Mm.
That's tough. I mean, to be fair, they got all these other guys though. You know, they got Donkey Darwin, who isn't always a donkey, just scored. It was a hat trick or brace against Bournemouth. I can't remember. But it
He had a
was,
brace, but he's the first Premier League player to hit 10 goals, 10 assists on the season.
there you
He
go.
may look
Donkey.
silly when he's doing it, but the man puts up numbers. Can't argue with him.
And then you got Jota, you got Diaz. I mean, they got a lot of weapons. None of
They're
them
an
are
exciting
Salah.
team.
None of them
Yep.
are Salah. But like,
Nope.
still, this team is. I'm glad Tyler isn't on this week because I would never say this if he was here because he would just get all higher and mightier than thou, as he's want to do because Liverpool has been better than Tottenham for God knows how long. But basically, I like Liverpool. I like this Liverpool team and I like the way they're playing. And that Salah injury changes things, but I'm still taking Arsenal. I'm still taking Liverpool in this
Floridian.
yeah, exactly. So I just out myself there. All right, we'll move on to we're gonna skip well actually we haven't gotten to power rankings, but we're not going to do power rankings quickly though. The weekend ahead we got some interesting FA Cup matchups to look at just real quick. Tottenham hosting Manchester City on Friday, which we've talked about how Spurs have done as well as anybody against Manchester City in recent years. And I love this team. I would never sort of pick them to beat Manchester City. And the way the Manchester City is playing, I don't know if Holland is back yet, but still, like this Manchester City feels like they're just rounding into form for real. Kevin De Bruyne is back. I mean, it's
Have
not.
we gotten a chance to talk about De Bruyne since he's made his return?
It might
Maybe
have
I just
been
wasn't on.
quickly. It might have been
Yeah,
quickly, but yeah,
I could
he
talk for
is
hours about
ridiculous.
the guy, but he came on to that game and like demanded the ball at his feet every chance that he got, whereas other players kind of come on and just assimilate into the game. He was like, no, give me the fucking ball. I'm gonna go make something happen on both the goal and the last minute assist. Like the dude is pound for pound one of the best footballers on earth, and he's back now, and it's scary. But I will say this: I had a call with some unnamed Manchester City employees last week, and I talked to them about this. I was like, you guys drew Tottenham. How do you feel about that? Like, and pessimism everywhere. Granted, these are employees of City Football Group. These are not Manchester City players. But pessimism entirely based on their record away to Tottenham. So
Yeah, yeah.
it
I
could be a
mean,
silver lining.
we have that just last month. We went to that he had, and
Yeah,
we
that's
came
right.
out 3-3. So we just I don't know what it is about City and why we have their number. But
Well, now that you've gone and said it and gone on the record, you guys are gonna get
oh,
the
right,
doors
they're
are
gonna
getting
hang
blown
on.
off
But that's the
four
other thing
one.
about this Tottenham team is like we can
Yeah,
absolutely
you can hang.
lay
Yeah,
we can lay an egg because
yeah.
Ange is gonna be like he's not gonna sit back. He's not gonna try and park the bus. You know that.
No,
So
no.
yeah, I think an overbet might be in order on Friday
Just
in
might be in
that
the works.
in that Tottenham Manchester City game. Other games also on Friday: Chelsea hosting Villa, an interesting game. Chelsea quietly have not been nearly as shitty as they used to
Mm.
be recently. They've been moving up the table. Just something to keep an eye on there. Where are they? They're in ninth now. Aston Villa is in fourth. And of course, this isn't a league game. This is FA Cup, but still, it should be an interesting game. Ipswich is hosting Maidstone. That's on Saturday. Maidstone is the lowest team left in the competition, which I think actually, relative to some seasons, I think that's we're kind of Cinderella-less, if that's a way to describe it. Maidstone obviously is a
Yeah.
small club, but we don't have any of the marine. Remember that Marine club that Tottenham faced a couple years ago?
Oh
They
yeah.
right, they
By
were
this
like
stage, there's usually still some teams that are hanging around that probably on paper didn't deserve to be there, but now it doesn't feel like that. It feels like all the upper league teams are really taking what's theirs.
exactly. I mean, Maidstone. To be fair, Maidstone United is in the National League South, so that's the
Okay.
sixth level. So
Yeah.
that's actually pretty far. I think that the Marine club that I'm thinking of was like in the 7th or 8th. So they were definitely lower than Maidstone, but Maidstone is the Cinderella of
To give the
this year.
folks at home some context, could you compare National League South, the standard of play, to a standard of play we have here domestically in the States? Would you say it's above or below Division I college soccer?
See, I wouldn't know how to compare that. I was thinking more like
Right.
a USL League Two or something like it, or Division Two. Would that
I
you
would
think?
I would go as far as to say a top 25 ranked college soccer team in the United States beat a National League South team.
That would be my guess. That would absolutely be my guess.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that a D1 team probably these days. I mean, you usually gotta if you're
Yeah.
talking like the upper crust
Oh,
of
I'm talking a
D1,
top 25 Division I college team. Yes.
where you're gonna have some guys drafted to
Yep.
MLS. I would probably that's a good question. I would take the D1
I
soccer
would
team.
too.
That would be my
Maybe that's a weekly what if to put in there and
that is a
or ask the
very
people
there. We just
on the
slipped one
internet.
in. We just slipped one
Yeah.
in without even saying it. Well done, Mitch. Last game to point out in this 4th round of FA Cup, Leeds will be hosting Plymouth Argyle, and the reason that is worth pointing out is that this breaks a 13 game streak that Leeds United was on, where they would always get drawn away 13 straight times. I saw some sort of stat. It
Damn.
was like one in, I don't know if it was 18,000 or 8,000. The chances of that actually happening are just, it's like flipping a coin,
And getting
13 straight
13
times.
straight heads. Yeah.
Right. It's just
That's
like it
not
doesn't happen. But they finally got drafted, got drawn at home. So shout out to Leeds United for hosting the FA Cup game for the first time, God knows how long. All right. We will be back next week with some actual Premier League, previews, not reviews because there won't have been games, but we will have previews. They got a full slate, I think, of midweek games, and then maybe like a full slate of weekend games as well. I can't remember on that one, but we will be back with some actual Premier League talk soon. So stick with us on that. We'll move over.
I got one
Oh,
more FA Cup game to plug.
oh,
Fulham
okay.
Liverpool. I will be attending Fulham Liverpool at Craven Cottage. I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been to London before, actually. So this is going to be my first time in London. If anybody that's listening is going to Liverpool Fulham on Wednesday evening, please hit me up. Let's link up and do something. Because I've never been to London and I'm looking forward to seeing the sights. So
Get some
hit
pints,
me up.
or if you're like, I know we got some Fulham fans here. If you got some recommendations or suggestions for,
Yeah, absolutely.
where Mitch should go,
Please.
I know that Craven Cottage is a cool place to see a game and to hang out around. So I know people probably got some suggestions for you there. Okay, and shout out what was Puma for
Yes.
taking
Yes.
overseas.
Yeah.
All right, round the world time. We're gonna keep this quick. There are so many crazy, crazy AFCON stories that we could get into. That you know what, I'm gonna like sort of I'm gonna compile a list, and maybe next week we're gonna unleash them on everybody. But AFCON is wild. That tournament is crazy. I mean, the goals just today. I was watching or I was sort of following Ivory Coast and I think it was Guinea-Bissau, and
Guinea-Bissau,
like
yeah.
and so Ivory Coast was like putting it on them. They were
Equatorial Guinea, excuse me.
Equatorial Guinea. There you go. Ivory Coast, who has a ton of players that everybody knows of. They were dominating the game. They were like their XG and their shots were like way up. They went from down 1-0-1 to down 0-4 in the span of like 5 minutes. And they didn't score at all in the game. They lost 4-0 in a game that they were just kind of dominating all facets other than on the scoreboard. And that's just sort of a little taste of the craziness that's on the field. There's so much stuff going on off the field as
It's in their
well.
own backyard too. They're the host countries, and you're getting washed 4-0 at home. Oof.
Oof, that can't be good. That cannot be good. All right, we'll get into that. I think maybe next week because there are just so many storylines and narratives. But for now, we're going to do a quick recap on the USMNT. So January camp is over. This was obviously a very MLS heavy, in fact, I think exclusively MLS team, well, actually roster. And, it was a ton of young kids. We've talked about it in past weeks. There were some, some guys brought in to add a little seasoning, like Miles Robinson, Shaq Moore, and those types of players. But for the most part, this was all guys that, are going to be, hopefully most of them will be seeing at the Olympics for the U23 team. And then maybe a couple of them might be pushing, for a spot in the 2026 World Cup. That's obviously sort of the goal for these guys. Now, what I did was we played Slovenia. We lost 1-0. There's honestly nothing to talk about from that game. Like, it was not a lot of fun. It was a slog to get through. I noticed on, on socials that sorry, somebody's yelling in the background. I noticed on socials that there was just no sort of action, like nothing on Twitter, nothing on, not much on Instagram. Just, I don't think people were watching. I just don't think people were into it. I just I know that it's January camp, and I know that it's, the type of game that a lot of times, kind of goes under the radar. Relatively speaking, this felt like even less, sort of interest than usual. And I don't know what that says. I could make some sort of speculative guesses about, sort of the negativity and pessimism surrounding the program, related to, Berhalter being brought back. I'm not sure. That would be my guess. But yeah, anyway, what I will do, because there's really nothing to talk about from the game itself. What I will do is I ask people on Instagram, sort of, who did you have, as guys that sort of stood out in a good or bad way? And we'll go through some of them here. There were a lot of responses for Berhalter. None of them were favorable. And I'm not going to, there's no point in getting into those at this point. Everybody already knows what those, Greg's ineptitude, not Greg Berhalter, all this sort of stuff. There's just so much negativity surrounding it right now, unfortunately. But the names that came up in a positive light, Diego Luna was one. Esmir, I'm going to screw up his name, even though he is a fellow Scotty, Baraktarovic. He's from Appleton, up in Wisconsin. He plays for New England Revolution. Him and DeJuan Jones together on one side of the field actually looked relatively decent. They made some plays. I think that they were two that stood out as playing, pretty good games, and some people to watch anyway. So I mentioned the New England guys, Diego Luna. Anybody else? I think that's about it. There one name that was kind of polarizing, Aiden Morris, who, if you guys remember, he was Columbus Crew. He was brought in on a previous camp and actually had to leave early. This camp, this game anyway, several people said that they really liked what he brought to the table out there. And then there were some other people who maybe they were sort of remembering, his past experience with USMNT, or maybe they just didn't really think he had a good game, but he was the one guy that had positive and negative responses, and that was about it. Which I think, there was 18 guys that got, well, 15 18 guys that would have gotten playing time, and those are the only names that came up. So I think that sort of suggests, there wasn't a lot of impressive performances, long story short, which that happens, in a January camp where all these guys are young, they're nervous, first time out there for many of them. They know the pressure, and it's tough. It's tough to perform under that in a game when you're playing with a bunch of guys you never really played with before. So we'll see. We'll leave it at that rather than dig in on all the negativity surrounding the program. We'll move on to stoppage time. Put a bow on this episode. So listen, Overtrain has been cooking hot the last couple of weeks. I think we had thermonuclear gas 2 weeks in a row. We went 4-1 and then 5-0 last week. And we started out hot this week. Started out 2-0. I was like, oh boy, I might never lose another one. Well, of course, as soon as I started to think that, we lost a couple. Did finish the week with 3 wins and 2 losses. So, I guess more positives than negatives can't be a bad thing, but it was no thermonuclear gas
Hmm.
cooking experience this week. But that only means one thing. Right back on that pony, try and get this express train to thermonuclear land going again. So here's my picks. 5 aside, overtrain Wednesday through Sunday. We're going to start on Wednesday, Mallorca and Girona in the Copa del Rey. Girona right now is a cheat code. Like, not only are they near the top of La Liga, but they are scoring a ton, and somehow they're actually getting scored on a fair amount. So it's just a perfect storm in terms of the teams you look for in the overtrain. So on Wednesday, we're going Mallorca hosting Girona in the Copa del Rey. Thursday, we got Hercules and Cambuur. And this is a combination of several different narratives that are coming together. Hercules was this, speaking of this, that Marine team, this is an amateur team, this Hercules team that beat, I can't remember, was it Ajax? I think they might have beat Ajax
Yeah, they
in,
cup set Ajax.
right, the cup set Ajax in the KNVB Cup in the Dutch essentially version of FA Cup / US Open Cup. So they are playing Cambuur. And I know anybody who's been listening to this program knows what Cambuur is all about. Cambuur is my number one favorite team in the world at the moment. They score a ton. They get scored on a ton. Like, they are the love of my life in the soccer sense anyway. Shout out to Mrs. Army. But Cambuur coming together against Hercules, I just know that there's going to be goals in this game. So Hercules, Cambuur on Thursday.
Not
Friday,
to be
I'm
upset with the
ooh,
other Dutch club, Heracles.
different, different.
Like
That's right.
different Dutch club, which was in the first tier, but like
Yeah.
this is Hercules. This is like a non-league club.
That's exactly right. This is an amateur club coming up against the second division team, Cambuur.
Yes.
Shout out Heracles. They were a team that got scored on and scored a ton last season in the Eredivisie, but now they got promoted, and so they're sort of middle of the pack. Friday, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb. Liga MX has not been treating me so kindly so far this season. I haven't got a sense really of the teams. Usually I know the teams that are overtrained favorites. I'm not so sure this year or this season, but I think Puebla and Toluca are a team just based on their recent performances. This looks like a game that will have goals going both directions. So Puebla, Toluca on Friday. Saturday, going to A League. Listen, Australian League soccer is just it wakes you up in the middle of the night with a little ding, and it gives you that little goose of um, of excitement at 2:30 in the morning, and then you go right back to sleep until 2:37 when they score again. So Central Coast Mariners are hosting Brisbane Roar, that is, on Saturday in the A League. That'll be my pick for Saturday. And then Sunday, going back to Bundesliga 2. So Bundesliga 2 actually is a league along with Eredivisie, along with I'm trying to think of some other second tier leagues that are just absolutely great for overtrain. Bundesliga 2 is, along with, I would say, the Eredivisie, the second league in Netherlands, like, they are the two second division teams, leagues that are just brilliant for overs. And we got Hamburg hosting Karlsruhe in Bundesliga 2 on Sunday, and that absolutely will have 3, 4, maybe even 5 goals. So there we go. Mallorca, Girona, Hercules, not Heracles, Cambuur on Thursday, Puebla, Toluca Friday, Central Coast Mariners, Brisbane on Saturday, and then Hamburg and Karlsruhe on Sunday. Let's go get rich. Mitch, what do you got?
Not nearly as well researched, or as vast as your picks, but I have three teams, all of whom I like to cover -1.5. I like Arsenal to cover -1.5 at Forest. I think the way we've turned over a new leaf, we are rested, we're ready to go after that camp, and we're ready to go take the rest of this league by storm. So that's Arsenal at Forest -1.5. I like Bayer Leverkusen at home against Borussia Mönchengladbach -1.5. Leverkusen still the best team in the Bundesliga right now. This looks like the year that Bayern are not going to win it. I don't want to jinx anything, but like, I don't see any team currently displacing this Leverkusen side. Borussia Mönchengladbach are not as good as they were last season, middle to bottom of the table right now in consistent form. The third one is Real Madrid -1.5 at Las Palmas. Las Palmas are a mid-table team, but Real Madrid are Real Madrid, and they get calls that no other team in the world should. So if they're not going to win by one, they are going to win by two. Put all those together, it's plus 740.
I'm glad you brought up the calls that they
Yeah.
get, because that was kind of ridiculous this week. Who are they playing? It was, who the hell did they just beat? Almeria? Yeah, it was Almeria yesterday. So
Yes.
they won 3-2. They came back from down 2-0. And some of the calls they got were just absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, I think only Real Madrid gets those calls. Like, not just in La Liga, I think like in the world. Like, Real Madrid is the only team that gets that kind of call. So fair point. I was gonna bring up the fact that they could barely beat Almeria, but you sort of worked it in there, so that works. All right, let's go get rich together, everybody. And now we will put a bow on this episode with everyone's favorite segment, GOAWs. Mitchell, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. Yeah, I got two. I got a good one and a bad one. Which do you want first?
Give me good, because I got a good one and a bad one too.
Okay. Good one is Marta, the best women's footballer of all time. I loved what FIFA did. Wow, there's a lot of Infantino praise on this episode, and I'm not super comfortable with it. But I loved what FIFA did, that going forward, the Puskas Award is now going to be two separate awards. There's going to be a male Puskas Award, and there's going to be a female award named after Marta. Because of her greatness, I think that's a great award to dedicate to her. Also, if you watch her acceptance speech of like a lifetime achievement award that she got, translated from her native Portuguese, it's really moving, even in translation. She deserves all the flowers for what she's done for the game, and I think it's just a really touching way to celebrate an incredible career by naming that award after her. So I think that's really, really cool. My bad one is Dusan Vlahovic, who just jacked Weston McKennie's first Juventus goal by tapping it in over himself. It was going in, Dusan. You didn't need the insurance on that one. You did not need to steal that goal. I know as a striker, that's all your instinct is telling you, is to put this in, put this in, put this in. It was going in, and I'm sure as a high level striker you knew that, but you chose to stat pad. You chose to take a goal away from a good American in Weston McKennie, and for that you're a negative goer this week.
Fair. Not just a good American, a great American.
A great American, that's right.
Yes. Yes. Not only was that going in, I mean, I think it was 90% in when he.
Yeah, it was, most of the ball was across the line. He just felt the need to add that extra touch.
Oh yeah, that's fair. I'm glad you brought that up, because I meant to sort of point that out in some way, but I didn't write it down. So good shout there. They should just give McKennie that goal, and if Dusan Vlahovic has any scruples, he'll just let Wes McKennie have it. So my good Goa is Sam Ewis. So she renounced her retirement. Obviously she's been dealing with a lot of injuries lately. She's only 31 right now. So you would think that she just in a vacuum she would have more years in front of her, but she, in her time out there, has just been one of the best players in the US women's program, just plain and simple. And she's been obviously sort of a leader, and just an incredible player. And it stinks that her career was, it feels like getting cut short a little bit, by all the injury. But even with that, she won World Cups, and she's won NWSLs, and well, I assume probably won NCAA tournaments. I actually don't know that. I'm just sort of guessing on that one. But yeah, I mean, she's just a highly decorated and one of the you know highest profile, best American women soccer players out there. And so it felt like her retirement is like going a little under the radar, in part because she's kind of been dealing with those injuries lately, right? And so sure, her name hasn't quite been in the headlines. But shout out to Sam Ewis on a hell of a career.
I think her presence is going to be missed once we see that first U.S. Women's National Team game, competitive game, without her. We do not have another Sam Ewis. We do not have another striker like her that is as good in the air, that is as strong as she is, that is as experienced as she is. Like, we don't have, well, I know we have a lot of depth on the U.S. women's national team. We do not have another Sam Ewis that is just ready to strap on that number 9 and get going. So I think her presence is going to be felt in a couple months when we see the U.S. women's national team play again. But all the best in retirement.
And she did win an NCAA title. I knew it.
She did. Okay.
Yeah, she did. I just kind of assumed, somebody that
she's
good.
just a winner. Yeah, you can
right.
assume those things.
Exactly. So that was with UCLA.
Yeah.
Now the bad Goa, Molenbeek fans. So this is a Belgian top tier team. I just mentioned sort of the situation going on with Standard Liège. Heard some rumblings about other teams perhaps having sort of financial difficulties. I don't know if this is related to financial difficulties or if it's just the team is stinking, but Molenbeek has had a really tough season so far in the Belgian, Jupiler. I like to call it Juniper, but that's not what it is. Jupiler League. Let's see where they are in the table right now. So they are in the relegation zone in 13th place. So the bottom 4 in Belgium, get relegated. They are in 13th place in the relegation zone. And before this week's game against Eupen, who people probably have heard about, that's where Gaga it plays on loan from Chelsea. So they were playing against Eupen. Before the game, a group of fans, ultras, whatever you want to call them, came to the training ground and basically demanded to have a conversation with the team. And as happens in these situations, in kind of a surreal situation, they open the gates and this gaggle of ultras just had a face-to-face conversation with the players and coaches of the Molenbeek team. And I believe what the fans basically said is, besides the normal stuff, you guys suck, stop sucking, score more goals, stop, letting other teams score goals, and let's win some games. In addition to that, they said that if you guys, don't win this game coming up against Eupen, we're going to cause problems. And you know what? Sure enough, in the 85th minute, or maybe 80th minute, whatever it was, in the Eupen game, they're down 1-0. And fans, started throwing fireworks. I think they ran onto the field. They disrupted the game. They interrupted it. It was interrupted for a little while. And then as soon as they came back on, within 30 seconds, the fans went right back to it. And so the game was abandoned. And, I want to give them the bad Goa, because I do feel like that's taking it too far, right? Okay, your team stinks. They're not playing well. I'm not really sure that having this face-to-face conversation is going to, do anything in a positive way. Maybe it will. Obviously it didn't before this game, but it just feels like we have this expectation of, I don't know, we're getting a little too high and mighty for our britches. I mean, sometimes you just got to accept your team isn't good for whatever reason, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know. This is maybe me, old man yelling at cloud type thing, but it just feels like, everybody calls for the immediate manager to be fired, and this and this and that. You know what? Sometimes let them work through it. We're in January. They're 1 point away from being mid-table. So it's not like the season is completely lost. But you're now going to cost the team points probably because of, the stopping the game and all that stuff. So I want to give them the bad Goa, but I have an admission to make. I had the over in that game in a 6-game parlay. And it was 1-0 in the 85th minute. So there was no chance that I was going to hit that parlay. It was the last leg in a parlay. And because the game was abandoned, that game got voided, or that leg got voided. So I ended up winning the parlay.
So it's not an entirely bad go.
No, I can't in good faith.
Bullshit way to win.
It's so bad. That was so bad. But shout out to Molenbeek fans. I think you're getting a little too big for your britches. I don't really like what disrupting the games and all that stuff. I think that's taking it too far. But you won me money, so I can't really give you the bad go. I'm just going to give you a plain Goa. So well done, and stop being dicks. Yeah. So there it is. There's my good end, sort of bad Goa. All right, that's all we got. I said I was going to keep it to 45 minutes. I failed miserably as usual, but that's something we'll be working on among the other changes. We got to try and make it a little more compact, a little tighter. But shout out, Mitch. Thank you. Always great to have you on here. Everybody listening, thank you guys as well. And we will be back next week, bigger, better, and with more Premier League. See you guys then.